Mandatory sentencing gives that function to the legislative body. This is done a number of ways. One way is through the establishment of sentencing guidelines. Sentencing guidelines are one way of exerting control over judges. Sentencing guidelines typically operate on a grid. Some of you have seen this grid. This is the grid that's used in the federal system. And it's a two-part grid. One is looking at the offense level, 1 to 43, which is open to plea bargaining. Obviously, you want to get a higher rank. And the other thing is criminal history. And that's ranked from 1 to 6. So they decide the severity, criminal history, you go across, and it has a recommended sentence. Here's one of 262 months to 327 months. The thing about sentencing guidelines are that some of them are mandatory, judges have to go within them. Sometimes they're advisory, where judges should go in them. If they don't go in there, don't stay in there, they have to write on the record why they vary. So it puts pressure on judges. It's very easy. You stay in here, you're safe. No one's going to question the sentence. Sentencing guidelines, then, were an early attempt to control judges. More recently, of course, we have three strikes laws, and we have what's called truth in sentencing. Our film on Thursday is going to look at three strikes laws. New Jersey has a three-strike law. What we're going to do with the film is contrast California's three strikes law and our three strikes law. And they are very, very different. And we need to look at some of the major differences in those two laws. There was a state over the weekend, one of the New England states, Connecticut or Rhode Island, that just tried to pass a three strikes law that was in fact turned down. And it was turned down for interesting reasons. They voted it down because they felt it was too lenient, the way it was worded. And I think the people that wanted a harsher law were afraid if this law passed, they couldn't get it made harsher in the future. So it was kind of a coalition that went against that three strikes law. The other thing that's, in terms of sentencing, is what's called truth in sentencing. New Jersey also has truth in sentencing. Truth in sentencing is kind of a misnomer of sorts, but the implication, of course, is that we as public hear somebody sentenced from 3 to 10 years, but we don't really hear that. What we hear is often 10-year sentence. But they may be paroled at an earlier date, so we don't really understand necessarily. And we also don't understand that if somebody's paroled, they're still serving a sentence. They still have that entire 10 years. If it's 3 to 10 and the parole after 3, they still have 7 years of sentence left. Probably. Truth in sentencing says that people must serve 85% of the maximum. This is relatively recent in New Jersey. They must serve 85% of the maximum. See, under that truth in sentencing, you could not get a 3 to 10. If your crime fell, if it's a violent crime and fell into that category, you'd have to get 8.5 to 10. So it would have to be 85% of the maximum. So the minimum and maximum are close together. It's called truth in sentencing because it's more realistic. The public probably understands better. 8.5 to 10 years. The person should serve 8.5 before they get out. So it gives a narrow range. That legislation is new enough in Jersey that has not yet impacted our prison system in any great way. It should, one would think, produce an increase in the prison population. People will be staying in longer. It depends on how often we use it, and apparently we use that a great deal more. We use three strikes almost never, but we use truth in sentencing a lot more. They're both restricted to about 6 or 7 major crimes. They're not widespread. The third agency that's looked at in this chapter is administrative agencies. That's also looked at in the next chapter, and we'll spend more time on it in chapter 4. Administrative agencies are often called the fourth branch of government. We keep stressing in here that they make most of the laws that we're affected by. That on a day-to-day basis, administrative law has a bigger impact on us than any other kind of law. Generally, the purpose of administrative law is to deal with specialized areas, deal with technical areas, deal with areas that you need expertise. Legislators can't be experts in everything. As society gets more complex, aviation, communications, there's just too many areas that become too technical. And you can't have legislators dealing with those areas. So they create administrative bodies and delegate power to them. The administrative body then regulates that area. So it's giving power to a body who supposedly are experts in a field, who understand that field, and can make reasonable regulations. So the rationale makes a lot of sense. We've had administrative agencies since the beginning of the country. What's different now is we have so many, and we have them at so many different levels of government, and they are constantly expanding in their power. Although, of course, the Reagan administration did a great deal to cut back on administrative agencies. And some people argue the Bear Stearns incident was a result of two great cutbacks in administrative agencies and problems of that sort. We'll look more at that, but administrative agencies have a couple powers. Just look quickly at the book. They mention that they have the power to make rules. Rules are laws. They issue tons of rules all the time. The legislature has statutes. Administrative bodies have rules. They also have the ability to investigate. Administrative agencies can investigate. They have people who are investigators to go out and examine, look for violations. And part of the argument is you need investigators to get the facts in order to make decisions about what you're going to do. And then you also need people to go out and make sure that it's being followed. So investigation is an important part of administrative agencies. And you have probably investigation in local community in terms of administrative agencies, zoning, other kinds of things like that. The third major function that, again, is kind of strange is adjudication. They do it all. They make laws, they do investigation, they do police kind of work, and they do judicial work. They make decisions. People go before administrative boards that have violated them in some way. They don't involve a jury. They're much different from a traditional criminal case.